Yesterday I watched it on YouTube. Now I know it's a fact.
G'day everyone, the anti-theocrat. Now if I get this one done, this will be 5 in 4 days, probably for posting tomorrow, so we'll call it 5 in 5 days for 2020. Ever since I started back into production, not bad I reckon. So, it's another one of those things, but I'm going to try for something different. We're going to look at mixed messages a little bit, I think. I think that's how we cover this one. Let's see what we can do. What do we got up here? Nope, there it is. How to recognize signs of domestic violence. What you can do. So let's have a look at this, shall we? This is again from our lovely ABC, our government-funded broadcaster here in Australia. Our taxpayer dollars pay for this tripe. So let's have a look, shall we? Let's start over here. 1-800-RESPECT. Totally gone feminist. No good calling them if you're a man. Woman's crisis line. Yeah. Men's referral service will put you onto a behaviour changing program if that's what you're after. There's really nothing they can refer you to other than that in the Australian system. So you're going to be dealing with a feminist service there again. Lifeline, questionable service. Really, their attention to detail and shit is very questionable. Relationships Australia sacked one of their mental health experts because he dared to say that women could also be perpetrators. So, yes, feminist. This is entirely a feminist, and not unsurprisingly, as this is basically all anyone can recommend for domestic violence services in this country. 1-800 is actually the primary government response line, and it is extremely feminist. I was doing research. I'm still trying to get the research done, but I'm having trouble finding a place to publish it on the services which are in their recommendation, in their services list. And so far, I am not finding any that work with men except in a negative feminist manner. So anyway, I thought we'd address this first. Basically, if any of these websites tell you to call these places if you're in a family violence situation and you're male, I recommend don't. Dads in Distress is one that you can call, where you'll find men who've had situations that will talk to you. Otherwise, go online. There are some Facebook pages for fathers and several men's rights groups. And don't just dismiss the suggestion that you go to men's rights groups because they're men's rights groups. Men's rights are human rights. That's what they're essentially fighting for. And I know a lot of people who might get this message from me know that, but I just want to be sure that anyone listening who may not have quite got that red pill message yet, men's rights are human rights. So you will find men who will sympathise and try to help you if you go to the right places. Avoid anything recommended by the ABC. Getting back to the article. How to recognise the signs of domestic violence and what can you do? I'm just going to read these a bit and see where we end up. It's Christmas Day and the rallies are gathering. Okay, so we've got a time frame for when this was actually published. The banter and beers are flowing freely, but you just can't shake the feeling something is not quite right. It could have been the way she talked to him, or maybe it was the way she grabbed his arm. I read it that way for a reason, because there's no reason for this to be portrayed as he and her. This could go either way. I know that it's the ABC narrative to always make it this way, and it's probably exactly what the writer is intending. You wonder if everything is okay at home. Maybe you should say something. But what if you make the situation worse? I think friends and family and communities are still too scared to say something because they're scared they might say something wrong, says Dr. Sarah Wendt, a professor of social work at Flinders University. Well, she's a valuable person, isn't she? A social work professor. That's like telling me you're a professor of political science. Basically, you're a professor of woo, because you've got no fucking idea. And chances are you've been given a feminist education, in which case you've got less than no fucking idea. Your ideas are fucking bent and twisted. Anyway, but this doesn't have to be the case. Actually, I'm going to step aside for a minute. I have a life rule. I learned this a long time ago, but I actually fell into a situation without even trying to that proved my case. Never get involved in people's personal relationships unless it's an issue the police should be involved in. Seriously, just don't. I one time was walking behind 5 people. There was the guys in front and then 2 girls behind. One of the guys up front was my best mate at that time, and one of the girls was his girlfriend. Now, I had just gone on 4 weeks holiday and was thousands of miles away from where I was actually working and living. I didn't know these girls. Well, I didn't know his girlfriend from, any other woman on the planet that I've never met. So she bursts out in tears and breaks down, and because there's a narrow walkway, I've got no way of getting past them, and she starts telling me that my mate's an arsehole to her. To which I basically say nothing and shut my mouth and don't get involved. I think I might have said, well, your business to sort it out or something. I really tried not to give anything at all, because this is a lesson I saw other people should have learned it earlier in my life. So my mate, for a long time afterwards, I don't talk to him anymore, but for a long time after that, blamed me for his breakup with his girlfriend. Just don't get involved in other people's relationships unless you believe the police need to be involved. It'll only backfire on you. According to experts, of course, this is written by a woman, and women think they should always interfere in other people's relationships. So we will go on reading and see where she takes this. According to experts, friends, family members, and even bystanders can play an important role in supporting victims of domestic violence and safely challenging their perpetrators. While men make up an overwhelming majority of domestic violence victims, women also suffer from abuse. And I put that way specifically because I think men suffer far more abuse than they let on. Far, far more, especially by the terms that feminists currently make these things measurable by. How many hundreds of years of nagging wife throwing things, wife abusing man cartoons have to be put forward before we admit that this seems to be something women have done for a very long time. We now have some statistics available that show that men suiciding because of nagging and bringing down of wives and partners. We even have girls who've been arrested now and charged for bringing their boyfriends to the point of suicide, nagging them and encouraging them to the point of suicide. So how often does this have to go on before we admit that men suffer in silence far, far more than we admit? Anyway, so how do you know when you should intervene? And if you do, what do you say? I'll tell you what, when you see the fist hit the face and you see the blood come forth, then it's time. I'm sorry, I don't really side with anyone jumping in earlier than that. She's suggesting you jump in if someone grabs an arm a bit tight. Now, grabbing an arm a bit tight might just be that somebody is about to say, or suspects someone's about to say something in a conversation which has been agreed between them is not to be said in company. And that person thinks the other person's about to slip. And so they tighten a grip on an arm. It does not mean there is an aggressor and violence is happening. But this is how this woman reads it. Anyway, I am going to move on from this because this is how we were sold domestic violence come Christmas. Women get beaten up by men, and we should all step up and do something about it. And you really have to intervene at every time you suspect there's something going on. Anyway, I thought we'd move on to this article. Now, I don't know who Leslie Cain is, and I tried to look her up. She seems to be some sort of self-appointed expert on relationships or something. But let's have a look at what Leslie's written in this article, shall we? Because this came across my desk last year as well. My husband is so angry with me that he wants a divorce. By Leslie Cain. I often hear from wives who have husbands who are so angry with them that he is saying or hinting that he wants a divorce. Usually the wife has done something that she regrets, is apologising and saying she's sorry, but finds that neither of these things matter all that much to her husband at the time. Usually what she's done has to do with money, sex, trust, respect, or pride. But this can vary. So we've just named all the ways in which a woman can abuse a man, essentially. She can attack his money, attack him using money, sex, trust, respect, or pride. And she's admitting that these are the ways the women could have harmed their relationship with their men. Here's one example I recently heard from a wife whose marriage was seriously damaged by a situation she was in and her response to it. Because of the economy, her husband had to take a demotion at work. Money and spending had always been an issue between them, but since the demotion things had really come to a head. Her husband had wanted to dramatically change their lifestyle, live on less, so that he would feel less pressure and stress, and asked his wife's support of the same. The wife pretended she would go along. She didn't want to stress her husband out, but she wasn't ready to change her lifestyle, and she didn't see the harm in treating herself every now and then, since she thought he was overreacting. So she made little purchases on the side, and either incorporated them into her home so that he wouldn't notice, or hid them at her mother's house and sent the bills there also. Needless to say, the husband found out, and when he did, he lost it. Okay, so she's trying to suggest that she was just treating herself a little bit and saw no harm in it. But at the end here, she admits that this was underhanded conniving, that items were sent to her mother's house and the bills as well so that he wouldn't find them. That's underhanded and conniving. That's totally a breach of trust. He told the wife he couldn't be married to someone who respected him so little, who would go behind his back, and who was so sneaky. The wife regretted her actions and said so repeatedly. She hoped this would blow over, but it hadn't. She said in part, "Yesterday he told me he wants a divorce. He is really taking this that far. He said he has an appointment with a lawyer this week. He says there is nothing I can do to change his mind. He said we just aren't compatible in our outlooks, and he is not going to spend the rest of his life with someone who lies and goes behind his back. This just floored me. I don't want to lose my husband. Whatever I bought isn't worth my marriage, but I can't take it back, and he won't accept my apology or listen to me. I'm getting so frustrated. What can I do?" This was a challenge because it seemed no matter what the wife did or said, the husband refused to listen. He either cut her off and left every time she tried to plead her case, but I was unable to offer her any insight that I hoped would help. I was able to offer her insights I hope would help. I'll share these with you. Let's have a quick look, shall we? We're not going much further, so don't worry. Basically, this woman is promising to never do this again, yet she promised in the first place that she wouldn't do this. So I don't have any problem with this. She's breached the trust once. Why would you trust her again? Why would you ever trust her again? Sometimes a husband's anger does fade in time. The key is to handle it in the right way through the entire process. I hear about situations like this a lot. Some of the time the husband eventually calms down, but just as often, instead of just waiting for this to occur, the wife becomes frustrated and eventually tells him that he's overreacting and being stubborn. Or she tells him that he can only repeat that she can only repeat that she's sorry so many times, and then asks how long does he intend to hold a grudge or act like a child. Needless to say, this can make things worse. Instead, I feel the best thing you can do in this case is to calmly agree with her and continue to do so. The fact that the husband did nothing, the fact was, the wife did know she was wrong. I'll keep reading it as it is. The money, trust, respect, honesty issues were ones that were always coming up in their marriage. She had breached these issues before. She knew that these things were serious issues for her husband, and she knew it would be wrong to be untruthful to hide her actions. Again, we're back to the fact that we're now having to explain she's done this more often. So she very well knew that he had no reason to trust her at all, ever. So my suggestion was that every time this came up, the wife should continue to wholeheartedly agree. She should say something like, "You know, you are absolutely right. Words cannot express how sorry I am. Admittedly, I was dishonest and didn't consider your feelings, and I regret that more than I can tell you, as well as the fact that you want a divorce as a result. I don't want for you to think that I don't realize exactly what I did and have remorse because I do so. There's no justification for it except to say, I'm sincerely sorry. I wish I could take it back, and I understand why it hurts you. It would never again happen. But I understand that you are hurt and angry and feel like you need to take some action, although I wish things weren't heading the way they are." Now, doesn't this... I'm going to stop reading this at this point because this makes the case that I want to make. I'll read this to you another way. So my suggestion was that every time this came up, the husband should continue to wholeheartedly agree. He should say something like, "You know, you're absolutely right. Words can't express how sorry I am. Admittedly, I hit you. I didn't consider that I shouldn't hit you at the time. I just had the rage on me. And the result of it is you want a divorce, and I'm very sorry. I didn't want for you to think that I don't realise exactly how serious it is that I hit you, and that I have remorse for doing so. There's no justification for it except to say I'm sorry. I wish I could take the punch back. And I understand. It hurts you. It will never happen again. But I understand that it hurt you and that you're angry about it. And I feel you need to take some action, although I wish things weren't heading the way they are. Please forgive me. I'll never hit you again." Do you see why I find this a problem? Do you not see that this is just this woman encouraging women to be abusive? This is how I have been told all my life that abusive men behave. Oh, they apologise and they're sorry and they love you and they really know they got it wrong and they'll never do it again. And that is Leslie Cain suggesting that women take up the mantle of the abuser. I'm loving the way these messages come through all the time. I'm loving the way that the ABC sees men as abusers and we should be reported for a tightening a hand on an arm. And Leslie Cain says if a woman does it to a man, don't worry, it's not abuse. You can just excuse yourself out of it. Moving on, I'm going to go to another article. Relationships Australia, we mentioned them earlier with the ABC. Okay. What to do if you are a male victim of domestic violence. Most victims of domestic violence in Australia are women. Right, that's where I'm stopping reading that. That's Relationships Australia, starting out with a dismissal of male victims. First sentence, dismisses male victims of domestic violence. Why the fuck would you start anything about victims with a denial of their situation? I'm going to stop reading that there. There's nothing else I need to say. When you start on that footing, I'll read the rest of it, hang on. With a man more likely to have been the perpetrator. Right, that's the rest of that sentence. Male victims of domestic violence in Australia. Most victims of domestic violence in Australia are women, with a man likely to have been the perpetrator. Other than the fact I call absolute bullshit on that, because how many men have to be nagged to the grave before we admit that women are abusive in ways which women want us to recognise abuse? But this is about victims, and the first thing it does is undermine the position of victims. And this is a national service which claims to be able to help men. I know from other people I've talked to that if you sit down to someone from Relationships Australia, they will favour the women. How clear do they need to make it? Moving on to our next message of wonder and bewilderment. Your dad had a heart attack because you were bad, growing up with a narcissistic mum. Do I need to read more of this one? I think you get the idea. I think you get the idea that this is not just about men, women, children. We're all involved. Oh, we're not all involved. I mean, people from each gender are involved, right? I have never hit anyone in a relationship that I was in a relationship with. I don't think I've ever been abusive in any way which wasn't either deserved, because I tell you, I've had naggers and jealous women in my life, and I have been rude to them. But if my being rude in response to nagging or jealousy, rampant jealousy, storming in the house and disappearing off for 3 hours so I have to hunt you down type jealousy, if I'm being rude to people because of that sort of thing, which is manipulative behaviour, right, that in itself is abuse. If I'm being abusive to you in any way, shape or form to try and respond to your abusive behaviour, I do not regard that to be my issue. Okay, I can be harsh. I think you've worked out from my videos, if you watched them, that I can be harsh. But I'm not harsh without provocation. It's not my natural state. I have actually had people I lived with get really surprised if I lose my temper because they don't think I can. I have actually had people say, shit, I didn't know you could do that, when I lost my temper at people. They think my natural state is smiling. I try to make it smiling. In any case, narcissistic mums raising children are dangerous people who commit acts of domestic violence against children and the men who have been in their lives or are in their lives. So we go from the ABC essentially telling us that this is an issue, we have to be watching for men tightening their grip on women's arms, to women raising children in the most horrendous ways. How are we not getting mixed messages? How are we not to see these things and believe there's something wrong with the way the world is reporting things to us? I just wanted to put this out as a quick one. I've got another quick one to follow up. Hopefully I will get that out tomorrow. For now, I'm going to finish up this one. I've been the anti-theocrat. May your gods remain fictional, and I will see you in the next one.